all day, all damn night. Who cares? We're talking sports. First of all, want to honor all of our American military veterans for their service and patriotism, and of course their sacrifice during both times of war and peace. All the men and women, we salute you. Wearing my best Veterans Day garb here. And Matty Ice, it's good to see you, my man. It's only been a few hours, but I'm glad we reconvene here as we await the college football playoff rankings. We will have a cavalcade of stars coming through, and we'll have our boy Ryan Baker from Bishop and Friends. We'll have Adam King from 10 TV, and we'll discuss it. Listen, I think you and I both know that this is just week 2. There are massive games on the schedule for Ohio State and others, especially the SEC. So it really is irrelevant to talk about bracket. What I do know is if you're a team that wants to get a bye, one of those first 4, I think you want to be anywhere but 4. And that's making the assumption that Ohio State's going to run the table, because I wouldn't want to be on their side of the bracket. So anywhere but 4, I think I'd be okay with getting a bye. If I was 2 or 3, it really wouldn't matter to me. But I think the big thing that I want to see tonight is, will the committee reward Texas A&M for going to Mizzou, winning on the road against, let me remind you, a third-string quarterback, a freshman. It's not like they beat a who's who over there. And then compare that to Indiana, which had lost a couple offensive linemen. Yes, went to Penn State, who hasn't had a good year, but we all know Penn State's a pretty tough place to play when they actually feel like they want to play. And then, of course, Indiana missing Surratt, their best receiver on that day, and still winning because Omar Cooper made the catch heard around the world. So we are a big toe of Indiana away from deciding whether it's going to be A&M tonight or Bama or Indiana. Where do you stand?
It's just funny, AR. We talked so much on the show just about Indiana is a legit powerhouse where we are right now. Who knows if this will continue for years and years. But the fact that we're even talking about them being a top 4 program in the country is mind-blowing. And they've earned every single ounce of this and what they've been able to cook up over the last year and a half, going on 2 years. When it comes to A&M and Indiana right now, I'd give the nudge to Indiana today. I think they're going to have Indiana too. I would have Indiana slotted in that second hole right now. I was impressed with the comeback. I know it was Penn State, and I know Penn State's a down program. I think you're going to stumble into some of these games year in and year out. You're going to have a game. I like to label it things got weird game. And for Indiana, it got a little weird against a team on the road that a lot of people think is down and out, and they are down and out, but they found themselves in a fight. They got a Heisman contender in Mendoza. He had his Heisman moment marching down the field, and you mentioned the catch in the back of the end zone, which was tremendous. And so Indiana's not a cute story. I think on both sides of the ball, they're putting up really good numbers. Their defense, I don't think, gets talked about enough, and how good that defense is right now. So obviously A&M has a lot that they can throw at all of us to probably swing us one way or the other. But I'm going to stick with Indiana this week. I'd have Indiana right behind Ohio State and right before A&M.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think if Mizzou, I know they were a top 25 program, and so they should get benefit from that. And I would not be surprised if A&M leapfrogged Indiana. And because I'm one of those guys that doesn't go to, well, Indiana should be there because of they've never won in Happy Valley. Well, we're not going against history here. We're deciding whether this team is worthy of being the number 2 team in the country. So I'm kind of in that mindset of that if they decided to play this week, see, what we don't know is how close that gap was. Last week, right? We really don't know whether, and I'll bring up the college football playoff rankings from last week, where Indiana A&M are 2 and 3. How big was that gap? If the gap wasn't that big, if it was razor thin, according to the committee, and they go on the road and beat number 22 and have pretty good game control, and Indiana has to come back playing 3/4 of getting pushed around ball and then needing that big drive from Mendoza. And I'm not taking that away from him because, of course, they were blitzing him too. It's not like he was just sitting back there. And like I said earlier, he didn't have Surratt, and I think they're going to take that into consideration. I would not be surprised if A&M was 2. I would probably, if I was playing the week-to-week game like they are playing, I probably would have to give them credit for going, A&M for going and beating 22 on the road. I'd have to play that. I can't go to Indiana, they're both undefeated, and I think A&M would have the better win this week. What I don't know, and I'll repeat that, is that if the gap was a little larger between Indiana and A&M, then I think Indiana survives this week of remaining number 2.
The other thing I've been thinking about too is that win for Indiana on the road against Oregon now, in the eyes of the committee, how legit is Oregon, right? When you look at Oregon's schedule so far, the game they just had against Iowa, is that an impressive win? Or do they look at that as you shouldn't have been struggling against Iowa on the road? I know Oregon went into their house. They were down one of their big-time playmakers, Dante Moore, with an amazing throw late in that game up the right sideline. So Oregon, and the power of Oregon right now, does the committee truly deem them as a real contender right now? That's the other part of the Indiana equation too when it comes to A&M that I guess could knock them if they don't think Oregon is legit, because you're right to identify the road that A&M has taken so far to get to this point. It is impressive. It is impressive what they've been able to do. And look, we're talking about the top 3 teams right now in both Ohio State, Indiana, and A&M, with probably the 3 Heisman favorites at the moment. And so you got to split hairs with all this. When we get down to the nitty gritty and these top teams, there's good things to look at on both sides. There's things you can look at on both sides that say, I want to go with this team over that team because of that. So either way it goes, I'll understand. But I'd have Indiana still in that 2 hole today.
They just kept Iowa at 21. They were 20 last week.
Okay.
So they did not view that as obviously their home field. Oregon was a better team.
Yeah.
I think the fact that the committee had Iowa at number 20 last week actually helps Oregon. I don't think they're going to look at that as just a limp out win, because Kinnick's a tough place to play. I don't think they're going to penalize them for that as they're revealing the top 20 now. Louisville's going to, they're at 20. That's just a horrible squandered opportunity. That loss of Cal over the weekend was horrible. There's Michigan at 18 now. So they're behind a 10-win USC team at the moment because of the loss to USC, but they know what's coming. They got a chance to get number 1 again in their building at the end of the month. That's all they're waiting on. So their 18 right now is somewhat irrelevant, and there's USC. Obviously, they had to be behind them. So
how about this bounce back for USC, AR? Because Lincoln Riley, prior to the season, was one of those coaches where we're looking at him and we're like, I don't know, like, how safe is this guy? Because he really hasn't delivered on the hype. And we were talking over the last few years how bad the defense has been. The offense is always fun under his watch, but this year they're putting it together. And I don't even know if it's being talked about enough, is what we're seeing right now from USC. I've been impressed with what they've done this year, because I think he really saved himself. Because if it went south again this year, AR, I don't know if Lincoln Riley's the guy.
He's feeling the pressure. There's no doubt about it. And their schedule, they got big chances. They got Iowa, they got Oregon upcoming. They could actually leapfrog the Ducks as the Big Ten's third team to crash the party if they go on a run here. So that's very possible. I saw Georgia Tech just pop up. I'll get the number for you here in a minute. It might have been 16.
They were, 16.
Listen, the ACC is a one-bid league. This is not a good league. There's Miami at 15. Do they have an outside shot at an at-large berth? I guess they'd have to go unbeaten the rest of the way. Yeah. They're going to need help too. They started with the game against who am I thinking of? Notre Dame?
I believe so, yep.
And so that's obviously something that's holding them up a little bit. There's Vandy at 14.
Vandy and Indiana, Anthony Rothman, are football powerhouses right now. Vandy maybe not so much, but the Diego Pavia story has been great. I mean, this dude's an absolute star for them. And without the portal, I don't know if this is possible. I don't know if we see Vandy where they are right now. Maybe you can say the same thing about Indiana. The power of the portal, obviously you got to have the financial backing to be in the mix now. But Vanderbilt, especially Vandy, was nowhere near being what they are right now. Never have been really in the history of their program. And so to see them, 14th coming in here tonight, playing in the conference that they're playing in, much respect.
They got to go 10-2. if they're going to make the committee think at all, they got to go 10-2. They got to get a victory at Tennessee at the end of the year to make it. And there's BYU. Boy, at 12, okay. I mean, they're going to get a rematch maybe against Texas Tech if they can win out, and they would go to the title game and meet the Red Raiders again. And that would be kind of a winner-take-all game, which I wouldn't mind seeing. I thought BYU was – it's not like they got destroyed, and they should lose in Lubbock. Like, game day was there. That was a big deal. But the fact that – I mean, they didn't have much on their resume, and now their best thing is a close loss, but they'll get a chance. Oklahoma, they got a chance. They got a chance. They got that game at Alabama.
Big one this week,
right?
Yeah, big one this week, right? And that'll be a fun matchup just to see because, the Oklahoma defense, I think, has been pretty good this year. It's been spotty on offense. I know Matty went down and he had to miss some time, but ever since he's returned, their offense hasn't looked the part. And so that'll be a really good matchup this weekend when Oklahoma squares off against them. And obviously, potential big-time booster for them. And here we are, AR, with the Texas Longhorns coming in at 10, 7-2. Great for Ohio State, right? Like, that's what you wanted because for a little bit of time, it looked like Texas wasn't doing their part.
But Ohio State hasn't needed that.
No, they haven't. But you'll take all the data points you can get, right? If it comes down to any type of debate at the end of the road here.
Only Texas, if they were to lose.
Texas climbing the way they're climbing, you'll take that all day and tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think they're one of the 12 best teams in the country right now, probably, based on what they're doing lately. But they're going to have a chance to prove themselves. And I would say there's not a team in the country that has a tougher road to try to get in than them on the border. Because if they can split win at Georgia or beat A&M. I mean, this is Arch Manning's revenge tour, right?
This is it.
He was the bust. He was overhyped, the whole thing. And now here's the revenge tour for him. There's Notre Dame. You got to see, Oregon's right there.
Yeah.
And they were a kick away from being about as good as that mannequin behind me over here. They were maybe a missed kick at Iowa away from being just an afterthought. And now they went on the road, and it's kind of like Indiana. They were a Sergeant Hulk, a big toe away from dropping this week. There's Ole Miss at 7.
Yep.
And
Tech's coming in at 6. Texas Tech.
Ranked, that they would be behind them based on Tech's win over BYU. And it really doesn't matter for them right now. I think Lane Kiffin seeding shouldn't matter. If Ole Miss, Matty, can get a opening round home game next month, that'd be huge for them.
No question. And I mean, Lane Kiffin, one of the absolute characters of the sport. I'm sure you saw him, getting behind somebody's picture this past weekend, photobombing. I think it was a proposal this past weekend. This dude just does not give a you-know-what when it comes to how he goes about his business. But you got to respect it, man. This guy has had a journey around college football. Now he's built a powerhouse down there at Ole Miss. We'll see if they can push through. We have now entered the top 5. And them Georgia Bulldogs coming in at 5. And here comes Alabama at 4. So the intrigue is here now. This is what we wanted to see. Is it A&M? Is it Indiana at 2 or 3? We shall see in moments. And AR, it's revealed. It's A&M at 3.
Well, they kept it. So here's what I said at the beginning of the show, and I think they took this into consideration. Both teams were missing something. Indiana was missing their best receiver and some O-linemen, and A&M's victory against a third-team freshman quarterback obviously didn't impress the committee enough to leapfrog Indiana.
Yeah.
Now, they have a chance. If they finish unbeaten as SEC champs, everything's golden for them. So since they won at Notre Dame, they've been taking advantage of a little bit of a cake schedule up to this last week. They got a break. Of course, Ohio State's number 1. And the last remaining big deal for A&M is going to be that game against Texas on November 28th.
Be huge. It'd be absolutely huge. And I think Indiana at this point is getting a little bit of the benefit of the doubt as far as what they've been able to do even prior to this Penn State game. So in the minds of the committee, you look at how they've handled business against teams that they were supposed to dominate, and they have. I mean, they scored 50 points a few times this year. And so you look at, I don't like taking away from a team when they get into a, one time, maybe or twice on their schedule, they get into a tough situation and they earned it. And I think winning on the road at Penn State, regardless of what we think about their football team, but the environment and what it took in that moment, to me, that's signs of a championship type of team. So I like that they're still giving Indiana the nudge over A&M right now, even though, like you're saying, A&M's got some games, some big time games coming up to where maybe they can make that leap over Indiana in time. We shall see.
I mean, do I think that Oregon is a better football team than Notre Dame? No, I don't.
I don't either.
But the fact that the committee, as I mentioned earlier, had Iowa at 20 last week insulated that victory for Oregon, and they have them at 8 still. So that's interesting to me. All right, who's knocking on our door? Who's knocking on our back door? I think it's Ryan Baker.
Big Show.
Bishop and Friends.
There he is.
Producer of Bishop and Friends. There he is.
What up, Big Show?
What's up, gentlemen? You guys are sounding great on here, just sitting in the backstage listening.
Listen, I'm telling you, Rhino, you are making our show a lot better and smarter right now. All right, so let's start at the bigger question, or the biggest question for the committee this week. I know we can go to the fringes, and that's fine, but let's go to the top where it's exciting, where the real cheesecake is. Let's talk about that A&M versus Indiana. You heard us talking. Where were you? I mean, I know it was splitting hairs, but clearly the committee said that A&M win wasn't impressive enough to leapfrog. You think that the drama of Indiana and Happy Valley won the day, not just the win, but the way they won?
I never once thought the question was A&M or Indiana, quite frankly.
Thought it was
because I don't think that Missouri win, especially with the third string quarterback, is going to move the needle. I was kind of worried, and I don't think they should have, and I think they got it right, but I was wondering if they would put Indiana over Ohio State, just with the nostalgia of that win, beating Penn State in Happy Valley for the first time. Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy favorite now from everyone, leading them on that drive. That's what I wondered, is maybe would they do that? I don't think they should have, and they didn't. I think that was the right way to go. I think their question with A&M, quite frankly, is it them or Bama? And it's easy for them to say A&M is undefeated, so we can put them ahead of them. But I think that's the question there. Who's 3? Is it A&M or is it Bama?
So I think they went with the fact that Bama has a loss and A&M's undefeated.
Correct. Absolutely.
And that was it. And that's an easy way out right now. And I'm not crushing the committee. I didn't think there was any drastic move that needed to be made other than dropping BYU out, which they did. The other question I think we're going to have, which will be a fun question later down the road, is what I mentioned earlier. If Texas actually picks off Georgia or A&M, they will have to be in as a 3-loss team.
For sure. And I think that's what we kind of thought last week. Like, the committee was going to set up Texas and Oklahoma both to be in this thing if the chips fell the way they needed to, especially with Texas. And they have them right there at 10 and 11 this week. So they both bump up one spot. Texas, we can say what we want about how they look, but they have their loss to open the season here at Ohio State looks pretty decent. 14-7, the team that plays Ohio State the closest. And look, I was there in the shoe that day. That Texas defense is for real. And athlete for athlete, they can go. It seems like maybe they figured something out on offense now with Arch. So definitely Texas A&M. I think if any team's going to get in with 3 losses, it would be Texas.
I'm a little surprised, a little bit, just slightly, that they didn't move A&M up to 2. Their strength of record is better than Indiana. Their strength of schedule is better than Indiana. And if you were judging them on 2 versus 3 this week, A&M technically on paper had the better win. Now, I said to Matty before the show, or while we're in the beginning of the show, I just don't know where the committee was and how much they separated Indiana from A&M last week. It couldn't have been much. So I'm slightly surprised that they did not leapfrog. And they had the opportunity to do it, and they didn't take it. And maybe you're right. Maybe they were caught up in the Indiana mystique right now that showed something. Matty mentioned at the beginning of the show, he's like I think they lost an offensive lineman during the game and maybe another one. I mentioned they didn't have Surratt, his best weapon, so they must have taken that into consideration. And then, like you guys said, the Mendoza moment, the driving all the way down the field, the throws he had to make under pressure, and they must have been impressed that Indiana faced adversity in a respectable environment enough to keep them there.
Here's my question with that, AR. And again, I don't know what they're doing with the committee. This isn't a week-to-week thing, right? To me, like, this is supposed to be the season and who's had the best season, correct? And so if you put Indiana ahead of Texas A&M last week, where do you see anything last week that would make you change that? And
just the ranking, just the fact that Missouri was a top 25 team. That's the only reason.
But Indiana has the best win of the season. Mm-hmm. Between those two teams, going to Oregon and beating Oregon, that's the best win of the season. Now, A&M's win over Notre Dame is nothing to shake a stick at, but the rest of their schedule hasn't been that tough, especially for the SEC.
Just like Matty, I'll bring you in on this. The difference is that Indiana and A&M were so close last week, so it wasn't like we're trying to take A&M at like 8 and leapfrog Indiana at 2. They were so close. And then Missouri and then A&M got what you'd call maybe a better data point this week. That's all I'm saying. And I'm all for keeping Indiana there. It was splitting hairs, but that's where I was slightly surprised that they had the opportunity. They had the evidence to do it if they wanted to, and they didn't.
You guys have brought up something I'd love to ask the committee, and maybe they'll get asked about this, because you guys are right in identifying that Missouri had their, third string quarterback in that game. The hypothetical for me of if Missouri did have their guy, would that have been the difference in the game? Would that win in the mind of the committee have A&M above Indiana? If the same result happened for Indiana, same way they won the game, but Missouri had their QB1 or even QB2, do you guys think that would have been the difference in the minds of the committee? And maybe we would have saw the flip there between the Aggies and the Hoosiers?
Did you see this? Did you see the stat line of the Missouri passing game this weekend?
I know it was awful. What was it? Remind me.
Zollers was 7 for 22 for 77 yards.
That's nasty.
Now
that's nasty.
Now, so clearly they had something to do with that.
Right.
But and I don't want to take Indiana off the hook because they were playing a quarterback that hasn't had a lot of experience either. What I saw in the Indiana game for 3 quarters, and Bake and I were watching some of it together, was that Indiana was having a tough time physically matching up with Penn State's running game. Similarly, Ohio State had a little trouble in the first half against Penn State's physicality when they overloaded the line. So I'm just telling you, I think that committee, despite Penn State's horrendous season, I think they respect the talent on Penn State, the fact that it was in Happy Valley, and the fact that they had to fight back against that crowd and that team on the road for 90 yards or whatever it was, and they made a dramatic play. And here's little Indiana just hanging on to number 2 and probably worthy of it. But they probably considered both those things. But when I saw what Missouri's quarterback, I was like, even before when we picked that game, that was the tiebreaker for me, was that Zollers had to play. And against that A&M defense, it was nasty. It was really nasty.
AR, credit to you, by the way, because you said that before the game, that Penn State would be able to match up physically with Indiana and give them a tough time. They just put up on the screen they put up Ohio State, Indiana, and Texas A&M, and they put their best wins up. Mm-hmm. And it's Ohio State beating number 10 Texas, or Indiana beating number 8 Oregon at Oregon, and Texas A&M beating number 9 Notre Dame at Notre Dame. I'd love to know, AR, because you said that Indiana and Texas A&M were close last week for the committee. I'd love to know if they really think that. Do they think they're close?
No, I don't know. That's why I was wondering how big of a gap did they think it was within that 2-3 framework. We don't really know. And let's tackle that. Rhino, do you think that they got it right with the best wins? Because I got to tell you, winning at Autzen is tough, but it's not, and it's a big win for Indiana. I would never take that away from them, especially coming back from Mendoza throwing a pick 6 in that game and being able to bounce back. Like, Indiana's faced adversity in a couple of these games, and they found this winning formula which I think you have to give them the credit for. But I don't know if that Indiana win at Oregon is going to hold up as the best win of the year. I don't know. It is right now, probably.
Yeah, and I think you're going to have that right because Texas and Texas A&M still match up against each other. Texas and Georgia play each other here throughout the end of the season. So some of the SEC stuff is going to shake out. I do think it's interesting, though, as we talk about Texas A&M, and I'm not a big SEC bias, Big Ten bias. I do think the SEC right now, especially what happened with the Big Ten this weekend, with Iowa and Washington losing, I do think it's going to be tough for the Big Ten to get 4 teams in at this point, quite frankly. And I think the SEC will get 4 in, no problem. But I'm just looking at A&M's schedule.
It's
I mean, at LSU isn't ranked. At Missouri isn't ranked.
Yeah.
The only real win they have right now, if we want to take it like that, is at 8 Notre Dame. And listen, it's a great win early on in the season. Props to them for getting that win. That was a great game. They got South Carolina next. Then they got Samford. It's all going to come down to at Texas, the final game of the season, and what they can do there with that one. I also think it's interesting here, and I know we're talking 2 and 3, but we're talking SEC and Big Ten a little bit. Why is Ole Miss ranked ahead of Oregon? Like, what is our data points that say that? Like, because they both have 1 loss. The committee obviously thinks Oregon's pretty good because they didn't hammer Iowa for the loss to Oregon this week. So they still believe in Oregon. Why is Ole Miss ahead of Oregon? Oregon lost to your number 2 team. And what's Georgia? Georgia's 5. That's who Ole Miss lost to. So that's kind of an interesting one there, too, that they like Ole Miss better than Oregon right now.
Ole Miss did not really have a game to measure this week, even though technically they didn't cover against the Citadel. Matty, they were laying 51.5. They won 49.
49.
No, I'm not going to kill them for that. I think that Ole Miss win at Oklahoma when they beat LSU is probably holding up a little bit for them, I guess. And then that win against South Carolina, I don't even know what that means anymore. So you're right. That's a good point, Rhino, because they're kind of splitting hairs right there. I guess I can only let me go back to.
I think sometimes, too, we got to remember that. I don't know if the committee is as wrapped up in the schedule and schedule alone. I think sometimes that's part of the equation, obviously, right? But I think some people in that room are probably looking at, especially when you're talking about splitting hairs between some of these programs where it's the football stuff that may matter as well, right? Like some of these people may be looking at the eye test on offense, the eye test on defense, whatever it may be. Because I do think you bring up a good point, Big Show, about the Ole Miss and Oregon debate there. But to me, that's got to be baked into some of that too, is you had Chambliss come in this year. You lose your starting quarterback. Maybe they're getting a little bit of some respect for doing that as well, because you're right. I mean, both you guys are right. The schedule isn't great for Ole Miss, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're backing up their ranking above Oregon with some X's and O's type of stuff and maybe the adversity, at the quarterback position stuff as well.
Which, by the way, thankfully they are doing that a little bit because Ohio State's getting the benefit of that, right? Because Ohio State looks test-wise. They're the best team in the country. There's no doubt. So they're at number 1. So I do think Ohio State is benefiting from that, which I think I like that. Let's look at the teams on the field and what we see on the field and what is the best. We're doing, and I'm very guilty right now of the one thing that I hate, and it's the thing that I hate the most about these expanded playoffs, is we're looking at who has the best loss rather than who's winning games.
Well, and that goes to, they apply different criteria to different teams, right? The one thing that we haven't talked about is the eye test. There are some football people on that committee that maybe hold up some eye test for certain teams. You see this black hole underneath Matty here in the little pecking order we have going on.
Yeah.
Some people might like that black hole is offering up some great analysis right now, more than maybe this guy. 10 TV's Adam King is going to fill that black space right there. And there he is, still working at the station. Oh, he's even got his jacket on. My man, how we feeling tonight, buddy boy?
Look at that hair.
Hey, thank you. I've been in this waiting room for, 45 minutes. but I just had to sit and listen to Bake just talk and talk and talk. I'm just kidding.
Your table wasn't ready yet.
I got here 3 minutes ago. I'll say this. I genuinely enjoyed. I was just listening to you guys, and I enjoyed the debate, so I was fine sitting here.
All right. Let me throw this one at you. If Texas doesn't beat Georgia at Georgia, which I doubt they will, but okay, so let's go on that hypothetical. That Texas takes their third loss this weekend at Georgia on Saturday night at Georgia, but they bounce back and beat A&M at home to end the year. Should a 3-loss Texas team, hypothetically now, not knowing what help or no help they'll get, would their resume with a win over Oklahoma, a win over Vandy, a win against A&M, a close loss at Ohio State, are they in?
I think, and I know you say you can't know the circumstances. That seems very unlikely. I just don't see a path for a 3-loss team right now. If there is a 3-loss team, you're right. It's probably Texas. That's a good team to point out. But when I look at the rankings, and I got to pull them up here, but I don't see a world. I mean, you're looking at a USF team. You're looking at Texas. Miami as a 2-loss team is probably going to be in over a 3-loss Texas team. So the path to the playoff just doesn't exist in my mind for Texas if they were to lose another game.
Really? Even if it's a top 5 game?
I think at some point you can only have so many quality losses, AR. I know that you want to go stump for the SEC and say a 4-loss SEC team deserves to be in, but you can only have so many quality losses, okay?
Listen, they hung with Ohio State at Ohio Stadium. You're not giving them any credit for that at all?
Nebraska hung with Ohio State at Ohio Stadium last year. I'm not giving them
I'm just saying, you think I'm stumping for them. It sounds like you want to take away from Ohio State's win over Texas. You want to call that a cupcake.
You're the one. Hold on. You're the one giving them a 3rd loss. I'm not giving them a 3rd loss.
I'm going to give them a 3rd loss because I don't think they're going to sweep the rest of their schedule. What I'm asking is, would another top 5 win, despite a 3-loss season, get their resume to the point where you would agree that they're probably one of the 12 best teams in the country?
Well, see, those are 2 different questions.
Well, I mean, we got to the finish line either way. I mean, I don't
know, because do I think that if they had 3 losses, they would be one of the best 12 teams in the country? Absolutely. Do I think that they would make the playoff? No.
Oh, so you're going, they would be the best, but not deserving.
I would argue, sorry, I'm cleaning my screen here. I would argue they would be the best of the teams and also deserving. I just don't think there's a path to get there. I think there's too many teams in front of them. You would need a lot of help for.
I mean, the committee ranked them where tonight? 10?
Yes. So a 3rd loss, though, you're really hoping the committee. Gives you some love. But we'll learn a lot. I will say the one thing that tonight reminds me of is that we need to reseed after the 1st round. And I've never been a fan of that in tournaments. Like when you look at March Madness, I think that's what makes March Madness great. We're not looking for March Madness in football. We're looking for the best team to win. And the fact that last year, number 1 seeded Oregon had the hardest slate without a doubt. And then you're looking at Ohio State again. And there are people that think Notre Dame would be a top 4 team right now if they hadn't stumbled. Oregon, people think that they're a dominant team. That would be Ohio State's first game. Meanwhile, Alabama could end up playing South Florida. You're looking at, a Miami team that could get Texas A&M, and they've struggled. Like the reward for being number 1 is just not there in my eyes.
Well, but they took care of that, though, right? With like last year, Ohio State was the 8th seed in the tournament, but they were actually the 6th seed according to the committee. Like they took care of that. That's out of there now. So it's just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the ACC in the group of 5. So I don't think we have to worry about that. Like the whole Notre Dame, if they hadn't lost, would be in the top 4. Well, if Texas hadn't lost, they'd be the number 1 team. Like we can't go like, what if this had I think the committee took care of that by getting rid of the automatic buys and the group. If you win your conference, you're in the top 4. I think they took care of that. So I don't think we have to worry about that this year.
I guess I get what you're saying, and you're right. They did fix it from those extremes. I just still think The one that really jumps out to me is that 8-9 matchup. You're always going to have really good teams in those 8-9 matchups that just kind of were knocked down and were one reason or another throughout the season. And to say that you would play Georgia in the second round, like Alabama playing Georgia in the second round would be crazy. That's such a tough game. But there's just a world where I'm looking at it thinking, man, Notre Dame and Oregon, both of those teams. Do I think Ohio State wins? Yeah, but that's a gauntlet. You would go, let's say Notre Dame, then Alabama, then Texas A&M or Indiana to win a national title. Like, what? It just feels like that the one seed just keeps getting stuck. Because I would also argue that Alabama, statistically, and if you remove the losses, is probably a top 3 team in the country.
If you remove the one loss?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask quickly, you guys didn't see a path. This is what I joined in on. You guys didn't see a path for Texas A&M to jump Indiana tonight? Because I did.
No, I did. I actually brought that up on several different occasions, and I was trying to figure out why in their mind it didn't happen. And what I came to was that they consider, first of all, Indiana was ranked higher than them going into this week, so that might have helped them a little bit. And I went to not just the fact that they beat a poor record Penn State team. I think they gave Penn State a little more talent respect than their record probably deserves. And I don't think they were that impressed with A&M beating a third-string quarterback freshman who completed 7 of 22 passes for 77 yards. They didn't look at that they looked at it as a top 25 win, but not a classic top 25 win. And then I also think that they gave Indiana credit for doing it without a couple O-linemen and without their best receiver in Surratt. And I also think they gave Indiana credit for how they got it done, that they faced adversity at the end of the game against a physically good team. And I guess it was just splitting hairs, and they kept Indiana where they were. I would have had no problem if they moved A&M up, but I don't think it was a lock. I don't think it had to be a lock. But I am a little surprised. Just because it was a data point that they would have over Indiana based on the ranking of Missouri at the time.
Let me ask you guys this. If Bama runs the table in the regular season, goes on to win the SEC championship as well, where do you think they'll have Alabama versus the Big Ten champ?
They'll be number 2.
So you think they'll still be behind Ohio State or Indiana?
If Ohio State, I think if either of them wins, they'll be number 2.
Okay.
Undefeated Big Ten champ?
Undefeated Big Ten champ versus a one-loss SEC champ in Alabama, with the one loss being Florida State. I'm just curious about the resumes at that point.
I think. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, if that was the end result for both parties, Ohio State and Alabama, with one bad loss, but also a bunch of good losses, I'm sure in the eyes of the committee, resume versus resume, do you guys think that would maybe sway some people to the SEC champ?
I think they are given an opportunity, and I see this a lot with the committee every year, and I wish I could get in the room and just write on the whiteboard and say, let the easy things be easy. Let the easy decisions just go with the flow. Like, don't overcomplicate. They're going to have a lot of things to talk about in that room. So if you have an undefeated Big Ten champ, say it's 1 versus 2, the answer is Ohio State gets the 1 seed, and then Alabama plays Texas A&M. Winner of that game gets the 2 seed. Don't overcomplicate things that don't need to be complicated. Now, the discussion that I'm sure would take a long time is, what if Texas A&M wins? And then you've got Ohio State undefeated. You've got Texas A&M undefeated. That's going to be an argument that I think we're going to hear a lot of moving forward, and that's where you're going to see that strength of schedule come into play, which I still don't think Texas A&M has one that can really, really boast to jump them enough to jump them.
I like that you brought up A&M, because they go undefeated. Obviously, they're going to have that win over Texas as well, and so I do think that Ohio State could find themselves in a bit of a sticky situation if both A&M, Ohio State run the table, both champs, and A&M also has the same win as Ohio State as well. That'll be interesting.
Adam, it's a good question, and we appreciate it, caller. We're going to let you go and move on to the rest of the show here, because we have a guy named TLC that wants to take.
No, I am not getting bumped for TLC. No. Oh my gosh. You know what?
You brought up. Hey, listen. You made some good comments. Leave on a high note.
I will never do this again until next Tuesday, just because of this.
All right.
Just always remember, Adam, it tastes like Baja Blast.
Baja Blast, idiot.
All right. Thanks, AK. We'll talk to you, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
Man. All right. As we welcome in a moment here, the producer of the Rothman and Ice show, the one and only, the loose cannon, affectionately nicknamed on this show. And TLC, good to have you, my man. Thanks for waiting there.
First of all, am I allowed to log this hour on my time card? Second of all, thanks for setting me up to where I have to clean up his giant mess on the Adam King show that he's been hosting for the past 25 minutes.
In aisle 4. How about this?
Yeah.
So I think actually, I've been kind of playing a little defense attorney for him this week. I know that doesn't feel good, and it makes me feel bad too, but I do think, I said at the beginning of the show, a lot of this stuff is irrelevant because we're going to have games that are going to play these out, and we're going to get the answers on the field, which is the way they want it anyway. But I think, Matty, I'm glad we talked about that, potentially who would be overall number one. If you have Ohio State playing Indiana, you have A&M playing Bama. Now, we haven't seen those games. We wouldn't know how those wins look, game control, and all that. But I do think it is somewhat important that Indiana stays at 2. Because if A&M were to leapfrog Indiana, and I'm not saying Ohio State beating Indiana in a Big Ten title game wouldn't mean a lot. It would, because Indiana would be 3. But I think as long as you have a 1 versus 2 game and you're the winner of that game, and that's the committee's 1 versus 2, not mine, it's theirs. I think that would be enough to preserve a number 1 seed for whoever wins that game. But I think that's the insight I would give you into whether these projections and rankings matter right now. I think it matters slightly in that end argument, the end-all argument.
Yeah, and with Indiana and kind of having a shaky game against Penn State, it's kind of funny how that game is being discussed because so much of it is talking about the hero act of Fernando Mendoza to lead that game-winning drive when he led a game-winning drive against a team that is now 3-6. So really, how impressive is that? But even coming off of that, still to have Indiana on that 2 line above A&M, I think is pretty telling of what Indiana's overall resume is. And by the way, I like that they're kind of holding true to that instead of just going week by week as kind of like fans do. So I definitely think that Indiana's overall body of work, because they're blowing a lot of teams out, as we've talked about in the show. So they are totally justified in sitting there at 2. The funny thing about it is I think Alabama's resume is probably the most impressive in the country if you could just possibly if you could have every single team eliminate their worst game and just go based off of the best 8 games they've played. Alabama's probably played the best 8 games. They're going through an incredible gauntlet. So they're 8-1. And in fact, if you kind of tiered it off, tier 1 would be Ohio State, Indiana, A&M. I think tier 2 would probably be Alabama by themselves at this point. And then that third tier of Georgia, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oregon, Notre Dame, it's really hard to rank that third tier. But I do think Alabama is kind of by themselves having that win at Georgia on the road in Athens. I think Alabama carries a lot of weight, but even so, even if Texas A&M beat Alabama, and that would be on the heels of them beating Texas too. So that would be 2 teams in back-to-back weeks, which would be really, really impressive. And then I guess Texas A&M could also have an argument as to that they share the same best win as Ohio State. So there definitely would be something there. But I think heading into the Big Ten championship, of all holds, you have Ohio State 1, Indiana 2. I think you're probably playing for both the number 1 seed and the Heisman Trophy.
I think that's interesting with those 2 teams just looking at that play out, because if A&M did go undefeated, that would mean that they had beaten Texas and then probably Alabama in the SEC championship game. If you were Ohio State, though, that would have mean you would have beaten your rival that you have not been able to get over the hump the past few years. And then you would have beaten, if it stays true to what it is now, the committee's number 2 team in the Big Ten championship. So you mentioned they have the same best win. Well, it wouldn't be the same anymore because Texas A&M's best win would be against Alabama and Ohio State's best win would be against Indiana. And you still had Indiana rated higher according to the committee if it stays that way. Like you said, AR, if it continues to stay that way. Now, to my point, why wouldn't it? Unless maybe Texas A&M, if they beat Texas at the end, that would change things, and that would give them a data point over Indiana because Indiana has Wisconsin and Purdue left on the schedule. But still, you have Oregon ranked ahead of Texas in your rankings.
Yeah.
So the Indiana going to Oregon, to me, is still a more impressive win than Texas A&M going to Texas and winning in a rivalry game against at the end of the season. So when we talk about like this week, why would Texas A&M jump Indiana? Because I don't think Texas A&M's win over Missouri is more impressive. It's right on par with Indiana's win over Penn State, I would think.
Yeah.
Well, Indiana has kind of only been tested once, or I shouldn't say once, because I do still consider the Illinois game. But Texas A&M will have faced more ranks. Something to be said about Texas A&M facing more bullets and surpassing all of them.
So Indiana is going to be you guys asked the question, what would change that? And the only thing that probably would change it is that Indiana has set themselves up now where they can't just win anymore, although they did it this week because it was on the road at Penn State. But against teams like Wisconsin, who obviously pulled off a win over Washington, who just is brutal on the road, just complete brutalness. But the fact that Indiana, they can't just have an average day against Wisconsin or Purdue. They got to probably win the way they have been treating some of these teams so they can but keep the confidence that the committee has in them, that they not only win against bad teams, but they blow them out. So if they would have a close win against Wisconsin, or a close win in what they would call their rival game against Purdue, then I could see A&M certainly leapfrogging them then, just not this week. Just because they didn't leapfrog them this week doesn't mean that they're not going to be ripe for the leapfrog coming up if A&M goes to Texas and wins at the end of the year. Don't you guys all believe that that's going to be better than what Indiana has left? It will be.
Not if Oregon wins out.
Yeah, but if
Oregon wins out,
beats a top. Well, actually, I take that back because Texas would lose. If Texas loses at Georgia, they won't be 10 anymore. So,
but if Oregon wins out, that means they're going to beat USC and they're going to beat Washington on the road. So if Oregon wins out, that just strengthens Indiana's win over them, right?
It does. I'm just curious. I don't think they're going to penalize unless Texas gets their doors blown off against Georgia. They're not going to just bottom out with a loss at Georgia. They're going to keep them fairly.
I get that. I'm just saying Oregon is going to be a better win than beating Texas.
If Indiana does what they're supposed to do against Wisconsin and Purdue, then they'll have no problem probably staying at 2. I'm just bringing up the fact that they don't have anything left in their regular season, and A&M has a game at Texas. That's fair. It could be fairly.
And
good.
they have the win on the road at Notre Dame, which I still think is under dispute based off of the lack of flag on that touchdown. But whatever, they still went and they still won. So 41-40 is the final score, whether I like it or not. But that's a second playoff team that Texas A&M will have beaten, Alabama being presumed the first. And should Texas make it, should Texas beat Georgia, honest to goodness, if Texas splits 2 top 10 games, they're probably being somewhere in that third tier, that 9-12, who's going to have to travel for. So that'd be a third playoff win that they would have.
Let me ask you guys this. Is the USC game at Oregon a game for basically the loser is out and the winner stays in the conversation?
I think it's a great question because I was sitting here as you guys were talking, and what's so impressive right now about Oregon's resume? Honestly,
They were overrated.
Just winning by a lot.
No, you guys are right. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, like, because I know Bake Show brought this up earlier about Oregon. It's like the win at Penn State, the loss at home to Indiana. I guess the win at Iowa was impressive, but to me, their body of work and the wins that they've picked up don't look so hot to me anymore.
Well, you know what they're getting credit for in my mind? That they went to Happy Valley when Drew Aller was still playing.
The thing to me, sorry, Matty, is I'm just going off the committee's rankings. They have Oregon ahead of Texas. So they have Oregon ahead of Texas. They have Oregon ahead of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm basing it off of right now, right? Like Indiana, that's where the committee says they have Oregon. They say Oregon is right here, and Texas and Notre Dame are behind them. So that's why I say it's a better win.
It was a good win at Iowa based on the conditions and the team they were playing against. The committee liked Iowa before the week started. They had them at 20. And remember, Indiana got out of there. It took them a lot to get out of Kinnick. So I think that they've just respected that that's a tough place to go get a win. And Oregon coming across the country and winning there on the road kept them where they are. I'm just very, very curious. If USC beats Iowa this week and then has that game against Oregon, at Oregon, that's a knockout game. And I know, Bake, you said earlier when we were talking, you think the Big Ten's only getting 3. That's going to be a knockout.
I think that's the only way the Big Ten can get 4, is if USC can beat Oregon and Oregon doesn't have another loss. They don't lose to they then go and beat Washington. I think maybe a 2-loss Oregon and a 2-loss USC might both get in. That's the only way. The other way I don't even want to think about, because that would mean November 29th is terrible for us.
Yeah.
But I think that's the only way the Big Ten can get 4.
All right. Okay. I always use this line. I feel like I just gave birth to an accountant, because it's been all playoffs and impacts and analytics and numbers. And the one thing that I think the 4 of us do a little bit, maybe more than others, is talk about the eye test. Like TLC brought it up. Like Bama has a really, really, really bad loss on their schedule. And guess what? No one's talking about it anymore. No one's talking about the fact that team lost at Florida State because it was the first week of the year, and all they've done is win at Georgia and Vandy and at Mizzou and Tennessee. And
that's why. Yeah, that's why, AR. It's the resume. I think it's the brand. I think they get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that, hey, it was week 1. You're still figuring things out, and how they've gotten off the mat is really impressive. And so, yeah, they're definitely a dangerous team to watch out for, just based off the opportunities they have left. And they get this one against Oklahoma this weekend, and things definitely get interesting as far as the top 4 goes the rest of the way.
And I think a good thing that the committee is showing us too, the committee's definitely showing us that they're taking you at face value for what you did at that particular time and not really carrying things over. Like Notre Dame being ranked above Miami, like it's not like there's some ceiling there where Miami can only drop so far, or I guess it'd be a floor rather, where Miami can only drop so far based off of Notre Dame's ranking. Like they are taking you just for what you did on a certain weekend, and they're not necessarily holding you to what all of your opponents did, because they're holding them. It seems really interesting to follow as well as we go along. And with Alabama too, that Florida State loss that we're referencing that happened like 8-9 weeks ago, it seems like they are very easily recovering from that. And I think that they're ranked as such, and they are being treated as one of the best teams in the country. And I guarantee you, if they had a 0 in that loss column instead of a 1, they would be the number 1 ranked team in the question.
Listen, there's no other team in the country, maybe outside of maybe that Oregon team we're talking about, that somehow the committee is just giving an eye test to Notre Dame, because Notre Dame's resume is, I know they have the close losses, but you know, they are giving them the eye test. Would you not agree with that? They know they're good.
I think
would.
So.
Yeah. I think with Miami too. I think Miami against Notre Dame was being treated like a good Miami team, and I think Miami is being punished severely for losing games that they should have won. At least, and easy for me to say because I'm a Notre Dame fan, so of course this works in my favor. But I think Miami is a really good team. If Carson Beck doesn't throw 4 interceptions, like they lost by 7 to Louisville when their quarterback threw 4 interceptions.
They lost by 3. They lost by 3.
If he threw 2 interceptions, they probably win.
TLC, they lost
3.
by 3.
All right, even better for this argument. Perfect. So, like, Miami is a really good team, and so I don't think Notre Dame losing to Miami on the road is like some gigantic embarrassment. And like I said with the committee, they're kind of taking you at face value for what you did in that moment. And we talked earlier on the show this week about that Indiana Illinois game and how I still give Indiana a lot of credit for that game, even though Illinois is not ranked now at the time. And Notre Dame in Miami, that was a big spot. Notre Dame stepped up, didn't embarrass. If anyone's saying, like, why are you making the big case for Notre Dame being good? It's because there are too many teams. So we shouldn't be having these conversations, but this is what we've been presented. But Notre Dame with a very close loss against a Miami team that is good as long as their quarterback allows them to be. So I guess lately they've been kind of Saturday on that. And a Texas A&M team that we know is really good. So I do think being somewhere in the top 12 is the right place for them. And I'm very interested in this potential matchup with Oregon because I agree with everything that Ice said earlier. Oregon's resume, and we talked about that glut of those one-loss teams, which is why Oregon's at the bottom of those one-loss teams, is because the resume that we think that they have a lot of talent and their quarterback's number 1 in all of the mock drafts, but the resume, they haven't really been tested like that. So I think we're gonna have some really, really interesting matchups in the opening weekend of the playoffs, and Notre Dame versus Oregon possibly being one of them.
AR, you mentioned the eye test. I want to ask all of you guys right now, eye test alone, throw everything out, just the eye test. Who are the top 4 teams to you guys?
I think they've got them in some way, shape, or form. Probably Ohio State, Bama, A&M, and Indiana would probably be in that order for me.
Yeah, I'll have to roll with the same thing. I mean, it's hard for me to push back on any of what AR said. I guess if you pin me down to who I think is the most complete team right now in the country, actually, I'll pose that to you guys. Who do you guys think is the most complete of, let's say, the top 4, Ohio State, Indiana, A&M, and Bama?
So I will tell you guys right now, I think Ohio State's the best team in the country. I think it's hands down. I think Alabama's number 2. I think Georgia's probably number 3, and Indiana's 4. I do not believe in this Texas A&M team. I do not think they would beat Georgia. I do not think they would beat Bama.
Yeah, their defense is they sunk a lot of NIL into that defense, and it's showing. It's interesting.
Would you feel differently if Texas beat Georgia and then A&M beat Texas? Would you head into the SEC championship? I'll say it again because I think I was interrupting. But would you feel more strongly about A&M? So let's say Texas beats Georgia, which would be a pretty impressive win for Texas. And the week of the regular season, A&M then beats Texas. Heading into the SEC championship against A&M versus Alabama, A&M hot off a win, an impressive win against Texas, would you start to take them more seriously?
Well, of course you have to, but we're not there right now. This is just what it is right now. What we've seen so far, that's what I see by my eyes. Like I would love to know what Vegas would put on those games. Like if Texas A&M played Georgia tomorrow, what would the line be? I have a feeling Georgia would be favored. I don't know. Not positive, but
a lot of good conversations, man. Yeah. This was a power hour, and if you guys stayed to the end of this, we love you. We appreciate you. Of course, hopefully you're loyal fan listeners, and this has been outstanding. Hopefully we get to do this again throughout the playoff run here, or at least the CFP run, and then into the playoffs. So all good, boys. We get to see each other all tomorrow. So that's
yes,
cool.
Sir. Appreciate you, gang. See you guys in the AM.
Any famous last words, TLC?
Baja Blast, idiot.
There you go. Bake.
Hey,
Good to
thanks,
see you, brother.
Thanks for letting me crash your barbecue, gentlemen.
Appreciate you, Big Show.
Hey, Bake, I'll call you in 2 hours. We'll talk CBJ for a few hours.
I'll be up.
Drop puck at 10 o'clock in Seattle. Matty Ice, good to see you, my man. We'll talk tomorrow on the air at high noon. Everybody, thank you. And once again, to all of our veterans, we salute you. Thanks for everything you do and have done and will continue to do. Thank you, Jen and Tyler behind the scenes in the green room, making all of this run like a well-oiled machine. Thank you to the Turtle. I got to leave the pro shop. I might sleep here. Who knows? Maybe I'll hit the simulator. Boys, thank you. Everybody have a great night. Be safe. We'll talk to you on